The sun was low in the sky, its pale light stretching across the small town, washing the streets in a quiet stillness. In one of those streets walked a man, his shoulders bent not only by years of hard labor, but also by the invisible weight of poverty. His name was Daniel. He worked odd jobs whenever someone needed an extra pair of hands, never enough to pull him out of scarcity, but just enough to keep him alive. That afternoon, Daniel had managed to earn a few coins and bought a simple meal, a piece of bread and a small bowl of stew. It wasn't much, but to him it was warmth, comfort, and survival. He sat on a wooden bench near the edge of the market square, preparing to eat slowly so the food might last a little longer. Just then, he noticed movement beside him. A man stood there thin, his clothes torn, his eyes hollow with exhaustion. Hunger radiated from his body like a shadow too heavy to carry. Daniel's heart tightened. He knew that look all too well. The emptiness that gnawed at your insides, the ache that robbed you of dignity. Daniel's first instinct was to hold tightly to his meal. He himself hadn't eaten properly for days. His stomach reminded him of his own need, growling like a desperate animal. But when his eyes met the stranger's, something inside him softened. He felt a quiet voice rise within, a whisper telling him that perhaps this food was never meant to fill just his stomach. Perhaps it was meant for something more. With slow, deliberate hands, Daniel broke the bread in half. He handed one piece to the stranger, then slid the bowl of stew between them. The man hesitated, his lips trembling, but Daniel nodded gently, encouraging him to eat. For a moment, the world seemed to pause, the noise of the market faded, the dust in the air stilled as two souls shared the simplest of meals, bound by hunger but also by compassion. As the stew dwindled, Daniel felt both emptiness and fullness within him. His body would remain weak, but his heart carried a quiet strength. He expected nothing from the stranger. No thanks, no promise, no future return. He only wished that for one night, another human being would feel a little less cold, a little less forgotten. When the stranger finished eating, he looked at Daniel with eyes that glistened, not only with gratitude, but with something deeper, a spark of awakening. He whispered a soft thank you, then walked away. Daniel watched him disappear into the evening, never imagining that this fleeting act of kindness would set into motion something far greater than he could ever dream. The days that followed slipped by in quiet routine. Daniel rose each morning to search for work, carrying the same tired body and worn-out shoes. His life had not changed after giving away his meal, if anything. The hunger had pressed him harder that night. Yet strangely, his heart carried a lightness. He often thought of the stranger, though he assumed their paths would never cross again. The world had a way of scattering people like leaves in the wind. But one morning, Daniel noticed an unusual buzz in the market square. People gathered, voices rising with curiosity. Children laughed, women whispered, and men pointed toward a long row of tables set up in the open space. Boxes of food, loaves of bread, jars of soup, bags of rice covered every surface. Daniel blinked in disbelief. He had never seen abundance like this in his town. At the center of it all stood a familiar figure, the stranger. His clothes were cleaner now, his posture no longer bent by defeat. His eyes, once hollow, now shone with purpose. He greeted each person with warmth, urging them to take what they needed. Daniel's breath caught in his chest. This could not be coincidence. Daniel edged closer, listening as whispers spread through the crowd. The stranger had returned with help from outside organizations, gathering donations to feed the hungry. He had shared his story of how one man, despite having so little, had offered him food when he was at his lowest. That small gesture, he said, reminded him of his own worth and gave him the strength to seek help, not just for himself, but for everyone. Daniel felt his knees weaken. He had offered a piece of bread and a bowl of stew, nothing more. Yet here before him was an entire movement of kindness, born from that moment on the bench. He stood quietly in the crowd, invisible as always, but his heart swelled with emotions he could not name. He had never expected recognition. Still, to see the stranger transformed, to witness families receiving food, was more than he ever imagined. The laughter of children filled the air, a sound so rare in the weary town. Mothers carried bags with tears in their eyes. Fathers lifted their children high, as if hope had returned. Daniel's chest tightened with both pride and disbelief. All he had done was listen to a whisper inside his heart. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky with streaks of gold, Daniel turned away from the tables. He walked slowly, carrying no food, but carrying something far more nourishing, deep awareness that perhaps the true measure of life was not what he had, but what he gave. The following week, the town square bloomed with life in a way Daniel had never seen before. The food drive had not been a single event, had become a rhythm, a gathering of hands and hearts. The once hungry stranger was now a familiar figure among the townspeople, speaking with determination, organizing volunteers, and ensuring that no one went to bed without a meal. And though Daniel lingered in the background, watching quietly, he knew with certainty where it had all begun. One evening, he stood at the edge of the square as lanterns lit the dusk. Families lined up with baskets, children clutching pieces of bread as though they were treasures. The laughter, the gratitude, the relief, it all rose into the evening sky like music. Daniel leaned against a wooden post, his rough hands folded before him. A strange warmth filled his chest, stronger than any hunger he had ever felt. It was the warmth of knowing that his life, though small in possessions, carried weight in meaning. For years, he had believed his existence was little more than survival, each day repeating the last. He had questioned whether he mattered, whether the world would notice if he simply disappeared. But in that moment, as he saw joy return to faces once clouded by despair, he realized something profound. His worth had never been measured by the coins in his pocket or the food on his plate. It was measured by the courage to give, even when he had almost nothing. The stranger caught sight of Daniel from across the square. Their eyes met, and though no words passed between them, there was an understanding and unspoken bond. The man's small act had planted a seed, and the stranger had nurtured it into a garden. Together, without planning or promise, they had reshaped the fate of their community. Daniel turned his gaze to the children running freely with bread in their hands. He felt tears prick his eyes, not of sorrow but of quiet joy. He had once feared his life held no meaning, but now he understood the truth. A single act of kindness, offered without expectation, had the power to ripple outward, touching lives far beyond his sight. As the lanterns flickered and the night deepened, Daniel walked away from the square. His stomach was empty, but his soul was full. And within that fullness bloomed a brighter tomorrow, not only for him, but for every heart touched by the chain of giving he had set into motion. Life often convinces us that we need wealth, status, or recognition to make a difference. But Daniel's story shows that true change begins in the simplest moments, in the quiet courage to give without expecting anything in return. Kindness is a seed, small, fragile, sometimes unnoticed, but when planted, it grows in ways we cannot imagine. Perhaps the greatest gift we can offer the world is not what we hold in our hands, but what we release from our hearts. If this story touched you, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing so more hearts can find light in kindness.